Well, I personally worked with Conlon since 1984, and I find them absolutely top of the rock construction people. I think of the old German bricklayers and construction people that worked, and their work was perfection. Well, Conlon is that. Conlon's work is perfection. Conlon has built all but 2 of the buildings on our campus, and those are the two buildings that we've had any problems with. We've never had construction problems or structural problems with any of the buildings that Conlon has built. When you have the architect and the engineers and the construction, Conlon, all working together, you know that you're going to get a much better project than if the architect's over here, the construction people are over here, and they really don't communicate well. And in the buildings we have built since I have been here have been a case of when the architect, the engineers, and Conlon have just worked in sync, hand in hand. And it's been interesting to watch them in operation, because it isn't just the architect with the ideas of the design, but you have the expertise of Conlon and, in some cases, engineers, who also speak up and say, well, what about this, or what about this? So I personally feel that we have gotten the best of all worlds, because Conlon just insists on working with the architects and the engineers. So it's been wonderful for us. Well, Conlon does create a budget and gives you a timeline, and they go over that timeline with you almost weekly once construction begins. If you don't have change orders, and in some instances you have to have change orders, but if you don't have any change orders, I would say they're right on the mark. If you have change orders, then you must expect that you're going to have a project that's going to run more than what was anticipated. But I would say they're right on target. You know from week to week just exactly where you are in the project, and I appreciated that a lot. The communication with Conlon in the projects is just top rate. When we rebuilt the fire damaged buildings, I didn't have a chief financial officer who oversaw the plan. So I took on that responsibility. And so I had daily conversations with the superintendent who was on the project every day. Either I'd go down to the trailer or he'd be up in my office. But I would say it was, I never felt that I didn't know what I should know. The fire recovery was a difficult time, but the Conlons were of great help to me. I'm going to throw this in, you can edit it out if you want. But at the time, we sent out, I want to say about 30 proposals to architectural firms across the nation. I tried to convince our board that we had an opportunity that we'll never have again in our life. And that is to build the center of our campus and make it artistic and beautiful and something that people would walk across or drive across the bridge to see. And so we whittled it down to, I think, 6 or 7 finalists. And then we whittled it down to 2. And the board was just very torn. So we suggested that maybe Tim and Mike go with me to visit the architectural structures that were designed by the two remaining finalists. And so Tim and Mike went with me. We got a plane, and we went to Iowa City, looked at the buildings of the University of Iowa. We went to Chicago and looked at the buildings at the University of Chicago, at Northwestern University, and the U.S. Gypsum Building in downtown Chicago, which now has been taken down due to the expansion of Wacker Drive. And we had agreed that we would not talk about either until we had visited both. So at that time, Meigs Field in Chicago was still in existence, so we had flown right into downtown. We got on the plane, and I waited for either Mike or Tim to say something, and Mike said, "There's no contest. There is no contest." So I said, "Well, you boys have to carry the water for me with the trustees." And that's how we got the architects. So they did more than be in charge of constructing the buildings. They were a great asset to us and a great asset to me in choosing an architect. We've had nothing but top-notch people, wonderful people here, superintendents to work with, on the people who've been on the project. I can't complain. No way. In fact, I would only give praise. I've been extremely pleased. As I said, I was never in the dark about anything. I was always kept up to date. And if I had questions, if they didn't have the answer, they got them for me. But that didn't happen very often either, because they were so thorough in making sure that I knew every day what was happening, especially in the most complicated, the replacement buildings for the fire damaged buildings. That was a huge, huge project. And you know, in order to rebuild those buildings, we also had to drill to see if we had any lead mines. And Conlon led that to make sure that we were on solid ground. And in one instance, we weren't on solid ground, and so we had to do what was necessary to do the kind of fill that gave us the solid ground, because we're just a mass of lead mines in this area. Dubuque especially is very blessed to have Conlon Construction. You won't find a better contractor. You won't find better people to work with. And when you look at the end result, it tells the story. Look at our buildings. They're beautiful. They're timeless. Well constructed. No, I just feel very blessed that we have Conlon, and I feel especially fortunate that I've been able to work with them.